Harper Audio presents Manifest Your Destiny, written and read by Wayne Dyer. I would like to begin this program with two quotations from the New Testament, the book of John. I'd like you to keep them in mind as you listen to this entire program because they really are reflective of all of the messages that are in these 9 principles. The first is from John 10, verse 34. Is it not written in your law, I have said, you are gods? And then from John 14, verse 20, on that day you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. You have the power within you to attract to yourself all that you could ever want. This is the central theme of Manifest Your Destiny, which is unlike any book or program that I have ever previously produced. I have chosen to write and talk about manifesting because I have been drawn to it, rather than because it is the next logical step in the progression of books and programs that I have produced over the past 2 decades. As I began writing, I felt a kind of humility, along with a feeling of arrogance. These feelings created questions such as, who am I to write about this capacity to manifest? Isn't this territory reserved for divine beings? What gives me the authority to tell others about an ability that is unique to the gods? These questions swirled around inside of me, and I was motivated by more self-doubt than I like to acknowledge. And then I did what I have encouraged my readers to do in my most recent book, Your Sacred Self. I banished all my doubts, and I began listening to the inner voices that kept telling me I would receive the guidance I needed, and that I would not be alone in this project. In other words, I surrendered and went deep within in my meditations and allowed myself to release all fear and doubt, and simply to trust. It was at this time, as I was considering writing these principles and producing this program, even though I had no clear idea what they were precisely, nor in what order they should be presented, that I received a message from a teacher named Guruji, to whom this book is dedicated. Sri Guruji instructed me to listen to a tape on the power of manifesting and to practice in my own life what I was being taught, and then to present this manifesting technique to the world. I began to practice the manifestation principles in my daily meditations, just as they are presented in this book and in this program. I experienced astonishing results almost immediately. A few months later, I produced a compact disc and a cassette tape titled Meditations for Manifesting, and thousands of people began to use these principles and practice the manifesting meditation techniques. The results have been mind-shattering. I've heard stories of manifesting job promotions, having a baby, which was supposedly an impossibility, selling a home that had been on the market for years without potential buyers, and other stories of prosperity and healing that border on being miracles. I know that these principles work. Their miraculous power is not based on a belief, it is a knowing. I know that we have a divine power that has gone untapped primarily because of our conditioning. I know that you can begin to manifest for yourself virtually anything that you're capable of conceiving if you practice these 9 principles studiously. Make an effort to listen to these principles and begin to apply them in your daily life without judging them based on what you have been conditioned to believe about yourself as a person who is, quote, only human, unquote, and therefore limited. What you desire is of central importance, though you may never before have even thought of desire and higher spiritual awareness as compatible concepts. Yet the process of creating begins first with a desire. Your desires, cultivated as seeds of potential on the path of spiritual awareness, can blossom in the form of the freedom to have these desires in peace and harmony with your world. Giving yourself permission to explore this path is allowing yourself the freedom to use your mind to create the precise material world that matches your inner world. That inner world is the catalyst for determining your physical world experiences. You will have to abandon the idea that you are powerless over the circumstances of your life. You will need to shift out of the group mentality that says you are incapable of manifesting. Examine the pressures and beliefs which reflect the thinking of your immediate family, your extended family, your community, your religious groupings, your ethnic grouping, your educational business groupings, or any of a multitude of specialized units of people. Determine the areas of your life that are jammed up with the teachings of those mindsets, causing your personal evolution to be slowed down because what you truly desire or believe is not getting any energy from your unique individuality. As you unplug your circuits from those external forces, you will see the speed of your evolvement increase drastically. If you hear a voice behind your eyeballs that says, "Move forward," You no longer wait for everyone else to make a move forward before you take your first step. When you cultivate the inner conviction to manifest from the world of the unseen into the material world, you understand that there is a universal God force that is in all things in the universe. There's not a separate God for each individual, each plant, each animal, each mineral. They are all one. The same God force that is within you and causes you to think and breathe is simultaneously in everyone and everything else as well. There is no place that it is not. Consequently, that which you perceive to be missing from your life also contains the same God force or universal intelligence that is within you. Manifesting then becomes doing nothing more than bringing into form a new aspect of yourself. You are not creating something from nothing. You're learning to align yourself with an aspect of your being that your senses have not known they could activate. You and that which you want to manifest into your life are one. As I wrote this book, I had the most peaceful experience of writing that I've ever enjoyed. What you are listening to right now is the result of these 9 principles. The key word I kept in mind as I wrote and allowed these principles to manifest through me was the word tight. That means to me no extraneous verbiage, no case studies, and a minimum of quotations. Each principle is explained in as straightforward a manner as I know how. Each came directly from my heart and not from my head. When I felt I had said what was needed to be said, and when I had provided specific suggestions for implementing the principles, I simply stopped. You are listening to the tightest handbook I know how to devise to teach the fundamental principles for spiritual manifestation. My internal knowing is that when you practice these 9 principles, you will be given guidance. You will not be alone on this journey, and you will see your desires manifest as your destiny in your daily life. Finally, you will know that your job is to say yes rather than how. I'm sending you all green lights. The first principle is called becoming aware of your highest self. Within you is a divine capacity to manifest and attract all that you need or desire. This is such a powerful statement that I suggest you listen to it over and over again and savor it before you begin this journey. Remember, within you is a divine capacity to manifest and attract all that you need or desire. Most of what we are taught to believe about our reality conflicts with this statement. I have a divine ability to manifest and attract what I need or desire. Becoming aware of your highest self does not happen through physical effort, nor can one rely solely upon supernatural techniques. What is essential is that you learn that you are both a physical body in a material world and a non-physical being who can gain access to a higher level. That higher level is within you and is reached through the stages of adult development. I present these stages with some degree of expertise because I've spent many years in each of them. They have been stepping stones to my awareness of my higher self. Each stage involved experiences that permitted me to move ahead in my thinking and my awareness. There are 4 stages of adult development. The first is called the athlete. The word athlete is intended as a description of the time in our adult lives when our primary identification is with our physical body and how it functions in our everyday world. This is the time when life seems impossible without a mirror and a steady stream of approval to make us feel secure. The stage of the athlete is the time in our adult development when we are almost completely identified with our performance, attractiveness, and achievements. Obviously, it is healthy to take good care of your body by treating it kindly and exercising and nourishing it in the best way your circumstances allow. Having pride in your physical appearance and enjoying compliments does not mean you are body fixated. However, if your daily activities revolve around a predetermined standard of performance and appearance, you are in the stage that I am calling here the athlete. The second stage is identified by the word the warrior. When we leave the athlete stage behind, we generally enter the stage of the warrior. This is the time when the ego dominates our lives and we feel compelled to conquer the world to demonstrate our superiority. My definition of ego is the idea that we have of ourselves as important and separate from everyone else. The ego-driven warrior objective is to subdue and defeat others in a race for the #1 spot. During this stage, we are busy with goals and achievements and competition with others. This ego-dominated stage is full of anxiety and endless comparison of our successes. Trophies, awards, titles, and the accumulation of material objects record our achievements. The warrior is intensely concerned with the future and who might be in his way or interfere with his status. The third stage is identified by the term the statesperson. The statesperson stage of life is the time when we have tamed our ego and shifted our awareness. In this stage, we want to know what is important to the other person. We've begun to know that our primary purpose is to give rather than to get. The statesperson is still an achiever and quite often athletic. However, the inner drive is to serve others. Authentic freedom cannot be experienced until one learns to tame the ego and move out of self-absorption. When you can let go of your own thoughts about yourself and not think of you for a long period of time, that is when you become free. The statesperson stage of adulthood is about service and gratefulness for all that shows up in your life. At this level, you're very close to your highest self. The primary force in your life is no longer the desire to be the most powerful and attractive or to dominate and conquer. You have entered the realm of inner peace. It is always in the service of others, regardless of what you do or what your interests are, that you find the bliss you're seeking. There is one stage even higher than the statesperson, and this can be described by the word the spirit. When you enter this highest stage of life, regardless of your age or position, you recognize your truest essence, the highest self. When you know your highest self, you're on the way to becoming a co-creator of your entire world, learning to manage the circumstances of your life and participating with assurance in the act of creation. You become literally a manifester. The spirit stage of life is characterized by an awareness that this place called Earth is not your home. You know that you're not an athlete, a warrior, or even a statesperson, but that you are an infinite, limitless, immortal, universal, and eternal energy temporarily residing in a body. You know that nothing dies, and that everything is an energy that is constantly changing. This inner infinite energy is not just in you, it is in all things and all people who are alive now and have ever lived. You begin to know this intimately. When you reach this level, you're in the space I think of as being in this world, but not of this world. Most people think of the spiritual world as a future occurrence that they will know after death. Most of us have been taught that the highest self is something that you cannot know as long as you're trapped in a body. However, the spirit is now. It is in you in this moment, and the energy is not something that you will ultimately come to know, but is what you are here and now. The unseen energy that was once in Shakespeare or Picasso or Galileo or any human form is also available to all of us. That is because the spirit energy does not die, it simply changes form. It can't die because it has no boundaries, no beginnings, no ends, no physical characteristic that we call form. That energy is within you. Gaining the awareness that you have a higher self that is universal and eternal will lead you to gaining access to the world more freely and to participating in the act of creation, or manifesting your heart's desire. There is something called the seen and the unseen. Consider for a moment the world of form that you see around you, including your body. Who is that invisible I inside all of the tubes and bones and arteries and skin that are your physical form? To know yourself authentically, you must understand that everything that you notice around you was and is caused by something in the world of the unseen. That something is the world of the spirit. When you look at a giant oak tree, ask yourself what caused that tree to become what it is. It started from a tiny acorn. Your logical, rational mind says that there must be something resembling treeness within that acorn. But when you open the acorn, you find nothing resembling a tree. All you find is a mass of brown stuff. If you further examine the brown stuff, you will discover distinctly acornish molecules, then atoms and electrons, then subatomic particles, until finally you find that there are no particles, only waves of energy that mysteriously come and go. Your conclusion will be that the acorn and the tree itself have a creator that is unseen, immeasurable, and called by those of us who need to classify such things the spirit or soul. This unseen world that is the source of the world of the seen is also the cause of you. In the beginning is energy, energy that has no dimensions, energy that is not in the visible world. This is our original self. It is potentiality, not an object, a future pull, if you will. It is this world of the unseen that I would like you to consider as you listen to these words. Look around you now at the world of form. Then look within and realize that the world began in the unseen dimension. Then make the big leap to the awareness that you are both of these worlds simultaneously. You are not separate from the world of the unseen, any more than you could be separate from the world of the seen. You are a combination of both at all moments of your life. The problem that faces most of us in becoming manifestors and learning to manage the circumstances of our lives is that we have forfeited our ability to oscillate between the world of form and that unseen world. Have you been taught that the Creator is something outside yourself? If so, your inner world, the world of the unseen, is full of notions that prohibit you from participating in the creative process. When you overcome these notions, your unseen self will be your ticket to creation in your life. What you want to practice here really is transcending your conditioning. Whether you like it or not, all of us have been conditioned to think and act in ways that have become automatic. We need to figure out how to get past this conditioning if we want to gain access to our highest self. You can be sure the ego will not take well to this kind of an effort. Asking the ego to help diminish its own significance so that you might have access to your higher self is akin to attempting to stand on your own shoulders. Ego is as unable to move aside in deference to spirit as is your eye able to see itself, or the tip of your tongue able to touch the tip of your tongue. Your task thus becomes a quagmire of paradoxes. If you rely upon your ego to get past the influences of the ego, it will only strengthen its hold on you. You must figure out how to emancipate consciousness from the limitations of your mind and your body. In the ego state, you generally experience yourself as a separate entity. To move past this conditioning, you want to begin to see yourself as humanity rather than as a separate form in a body. Very simply put, if you feel that you are disconnected from the rest of humanity and truly a separate entity needing to prove yourself and compete with others, you will be unable to manifest your heart's desire. If you are able to see yourself as a part of what you desire, you will have transcended the conditioning of your ego and of all the other egos who have contributed to this process in your life. Here are a few of the conditioned thoughts that keep your ego in charge of your life and prevent you from materializing what you desire and what desires you. The first is called, I am not in charge of my life. That force is outside me. You can change this perception. Turn your attention away from the ego-dominated thoughts about the circumstances of your life to the present moment. By consciously noticing your breath, the sounds, textures, smells, and scenes that the life force is experiencing through you. A second conditioned thought says, people cannot manifest. It is all a function of the cosmic throw of the dice. It's all just luck. Well, blaming luck or some external invisible force that controls the universe is a habit of conditioning that leads to disempowerment and ultimately to defeat. You are the universe. It is not something outside you. You are that force which is in everything, even the things that have previously failed to show up in your life. Remember, as you think, so shall you be. If you think you can't, you're right, and that is precisely what you will see showing up in your life. A third conditioned response, or thought. I have tried before and it's never worked for me. Here the conditioned response is believing that once having tried and failed, further efforts will yield the same results. Let go of your obsession with the past and with trying, and instead remain relaxed and casual in the moment. Your past is an illusion. It is the trail that is left behind you, and a trail behind you cannot drive you today, regardless of what you choose to believe. All you have is now, and you have never tried anything. A fourth conditioned thought. Only highly evolved beings can manifest. Here again, this is the ego saying that you are separate and distinct from your spiritual teachers and others who live at the highest levels. Relinquish those thoughts and replace them with seeing yourself as connected to everyone by that unseen life force that is your divine essence. The first spiritual principle directs you to overcome your conditioning. It requires you to adopt a new attitude about yourself, and then to put this attitude into daily practice. I am encouraging you to know the highest self rather than read about it, to know it in the deepest reaches of your being, and then to never doubt it again. I encourage you to follow these suggestions for developing the first principle as a permanent part of your total awareness. The first suggestion. Think of this definition of enlightenment: to be immersed in and surrounded by peace. Your highest self only wants you to be at peace. It does not judge, it doesn't compare or demand that you defeat anyone or be better than anyone. You know your highest self by listening to the voice that only wants you to be at peace. That's what enlightenment is. A second suggestion. Go beyond the restrictions of the physical plane. The purpose of the highest self is to assist you in this effort. You do this by creating an inner sanctuary that is yours and yours alone. Go to this silent inner retreat as often as you can and let go of all attachments to the external world of the ego. As you go to this sanctuary, a light will be born within you that you will come to know and respect. This light is your connection to the energy of manifestation. Here's a third suggestion. Refuse to defend yourself to anyone or anything on the earth plane. This is the challenge of the highest self. Use your inner light for your alignment and allow those who disagree with that perspective to have their own points of view. You are at peace. You never explain, and you refuse to flaunt your energy. You know, and that is enough for you. And here's a fourth and final suggestion. Surrender and trust in the wisdom that created you. This trust is your corner of freedom, and it will always be yours. Your highest self is not just an idea that sounds lofty and spiritual. It is a way of being. It is the very first principle that you must come to understand and embrace as you move toward attracting to you that which you want and need for this parenthesis in eternity that you know as your life. The second principle is called trusting yourself, is trusting the wisdom that created you. Learning to trust may be difficult in the beginning. It will be an exercise in futility if you rely upon your mind to create trust. The mind attempts to come up with intellectual answers by using proofs, logic, and theoretical reasoning. In contrast, the method of the heart, focused on spiritual understanding, is an intuitive recognition of the value of love. The heart trusts the inner wisdom that it feels and spontaneously knows, whereas the mind demands scientific evidence before it will trust. When the mind seeks corroboration through specific proofs as an aid to spiritual understanding, it is encroaching into an area far more suited to the heart. For this reason, it is necessary to trust what the heart knows. Without total trust, it is impossible to know the miracles of the higher self and become a manifester. This means cultivating a harmony between mind and heart, and for most of us this means terminating the intellect's domination. It is with this surrendering process that trust begins to flourish, replacing doubt. Here are two theories describing our place in nature. I think you will agree that the first theory illuminates why mistrust of ourselves and our divine abilities is so deeply rooted. The first theory is called nature as a mechanism. In this mechanistic view of nature, everything is an artifact made by a boss who has many different names. In the Western view, the boss is called God. This God is often depicted as a white-bearded male who roams around the sky creating the natural world. The world is a construct and God the constructor. This biblical God is paternal, authoritarian, beneficent, and, in many ways, tyrannical. He keeps track of all things and knows precisely what everyone does and when his laws are being broken. One of the operatives of this theory of nature is the idea of punishment for one's sins. This God-Father or Godfather holds us accountable for transgressions. All subjects are considered born with the stain of sin as a part of their nature and are therefore untrustworthy. This makes many people feel estranged. Once convinced that you are untrustworthy and basically a sinner, you're quite lost. You cannot even maintain trust in God because of the basic mistrust of yourself, and not trusting in that God may be breaking one of his own laws. It's a no-win situation. This theory of nature is absolutely incompatible with the second principle of manifesting. You cannot tune into the power and energy of the universe to create and attract an abundant life if that energy and power is outside of yourself. There's a second theory of nature that I call nature as spontaneous and non-judging. In this spontaneous view, God is universal intelligence flowing through everything. Nature is an unforced unfolding of life forms, and there is no boss. Rather than learning to manage and control the natural world, the impulse is to trust it. Human beings are an aspect of this God and are, therefore, carriers of divinity. Generally, in this theory, human beings are considered the highest level of life form. Trusting this most evolved natural human includes trusting the paradox of behavior described as good and bad, selfish and unselfish, or greedy and generous, in the same manner as we respect other life forms by trusting their processes. This second principle directs us to develop an inner knowing so that the natural process of what desires us is what we desire. Think of yourself as a consciousness being played out by God, just as a wave is a part of the ocean that is being played out by the ocean itself. The unseen divine energy is the ocean that your waveform is a part of. You can call it God, ocean, or anything else. This is a profoundly exquisite realization because with it, you bring to your consciousness the inner awareness that you are actually in all things. This leads to miraculous manifestations. You begin to consider what it means to be in all things at one time. Authentic trust is only available through the knowing heart. When you enter this trusting space, everything will come to you that belongs to you because you've created the inner capacity to receive it. The irony is that what you wish to receive is a part of you. This can be a troublesome concept to grasp because of the ego's attachment to being separate and special. Nothing in your rational mind could convince you that water is made of 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. It appears to be a fluid that flows and has nothing to do with gases. But when we subject water to scrutiny, its constituent elements become manifest. And so it is with the idea of being in all things at once. If you truly trust in this notion, you realize that everything that you perceive as missing in your life is a part of the same energy that you are. Manifesting becomes the art of bringing to yourself that which is already you. I have deliberately chosen not to use many quotations in this program. But I want to emphasize that every spiritual master and all of the saints and teachers and gurus or priests throughout history have espoused similar advice. This perennial philosophy connects all humanity, from tribal and ancient to civilized and present times. It is the message that God is within and outside every living thing, and that there is a world we are a part of that is not subject to the changing world of time and space that we presently are a part of. Since it is everywhere, it is not only within you, it is you. The meaning of this is that God is not to be found so much as discovered within yourself. The statement, "Thou art the path," is more than an ecclesiastical admonition. It is a statement of your reality. And then you must consider prayer and what it means to understand this concept of trust. In the matter of prayer, it seems that we often view God as a gigantic vending machine in the sky who's going to grant us our wishes when we put in the proper tokens in the form of prayers. We expect to insert prayers, then pull on the knob and hope that God will dispense the goodies. The God vending machine becomes the object of our veneration. We tell the machine how good it is and how much we worship it and expect it to be good to us in return. The basic premise here is that God is outside us, and therefore what we need and want is also outside of us. If we believe that we are separate from God, the vending machine approach to prayer reinforces and deepens that belief. I prefer to promote the idea of prayer in its essence as a communion with God. What we seek in prayer is the experience of coexisting with God. Prayer is our communication of readiness for the desires of this sacred energy to manifest through our human form. Therefore, the true experience of God does not change or alter God, but it changes us. It heals our sense of separation. If we are not changed by prayer, we have denied ourselves the opportunity to know the wisdom that created us. The search for happiness outside ourselves rekindles the idea that we are not whole and relegates prayer to the status of a plea to a boss God. We are then asking for favors rather than seeking a manifestation of our invisible, inspired self. Prayer at the spiritual level I'm talking about is not asking for something any more than the attempt to become a manifestor is asking for something to show up in your life. What I call authentic prayer is inviting divine desire to express itself through myself. It expresses my experience of oneness with the divine energy. This may sound like a radical or even blasphemous notion, but is the source of all spiritual traditions. Here's a few examples. In Christianity, they say the kingdom of heaven is within you. In Islam, they say those who know themselves know their God. In Buddhism, they say, look within. You are the Buddha. In Vedanta, they say Atman, or individual consciousness, and Brahman, universal consciousness, are one. Yoga says God dwells within you as you. Confucianism, heaven, earth, and human are of one body. And in the Upanishads, the ancient texts of the Hindus, by understanding the self, all this universe is known. Overcoming your conditioning in this area is crucially important. Replace thoughts about your experiences with the experience of prayer. For instance, praying in this sense can be a sentence such as, "Sacredness, guide me now," or "Sacred love, flow through me now," silently reciting instead of thinking thoughts. Prayer in this form is tilling and clearing the inner self of ego chatter, so that what you desire and what desires you can grow. My own personal practice of prayer is participating in a communion with God, wherein I see God within me and ask for the strength and the inner awareness to handle whatever confronts me. I keep reminding myself that heaven on earth is a choice I must make, not a place I must find. Trust, then, is the cornerstone of my praying, and with it comes the peace that is the essence of manifesting. And this idea of peace really becomes the result of this trust. You may recall that earlier I defined enlightenment as being immersed in and surrounded by peace. The more you trust in the wisdom that creates all, the more you will be trusting in yourself. The result of trusting is that an enormous sense of peace becomes available to you. As this awareness grows, you will discover that you are a more peaceful person, and consequently, that enlightenment becomes the way of your life. Being independent of the good opinion of others and being detached from the need to be right are two powerful indicators that your life is shifting toward a consciousness of trust in yourself and trust in God. Yet there are many people in our lives who disturb our state of peacefulness. The people whom we agree with and share similar interests with us are easy to accept and actually teach us very little. But those who can push our buttons and send us into a rage at the slightest provocation are our real teachers, disguised as manipulative, inconsiderate, frustrating, non-understanding beings. The peace that is enlightenment means that you are not only at peace with those who share your interests and agree with you, and with strangers who come and go, but also with those master teachers who remind you that you still have some work to do on yourself. Peace occurs when your highest self is dominant in your life. When you begin to feel peace as the result of trust, you are enjoying a healthy soul. There are many things that you can do on a regular basis to make this second principle of trusting in the oneness a reality in your life. Here are a few suggestions to nurture trust in yourself and in that oneness. The first is called begin by admitting your confusion or failures. When you're honest with yourself about every aspect of your life, you discontinue identifying with separateness. You then become ready for the insight that trust in yourself and trust in ultimate truth are one and the same. A second suggestion is to keep in mind that you cannot go to a higher ground if you're hanging on to a lower level. You cannot leave the physical world if you're so attached to it that you refuse to let go. The concept of trust involves surrendering to and trusting the God force. The third suggestion is to acquire a rebellious attitude toward the philosophy that preaches a style of God as boss, who is authoritarian and a benevolent tyrant. Rejection of this model does not mean that you are an atheist, but rather a believer in the true meaning of divinity. A fourth suggestion is to remember that trusting does not mean you never experience life's valleys. There will be peaks and valleys as long as you live in this physical plane. Do not abandon trust when your ego thinks things should be different than they are. It is better to embrace trust when darkness is present, knowing that light will follow. Begin to look for the lesson in the darkness, rather than cursing it. And a fifth suggestion is to take your serious problems and turn them over to God. Say something like the following: I've not been able to resolve these issues in my life. I would like to show my trust in the divine force by simply turning them over to your divine hands, which I know are also mine, and I trust that this action will lead to a resolution of these problems. A sixth suggestion is to remember that the presence of complete trust is evident in your life when what you think and feel and do are all balanced and in harmony. To say, I believe in a healthy body, and to practice eating in unhealthy ways dissolves trust in yourself. When you are incongruent with your thoughts, you are showing a lack of trust in the divinity that is your essence. And finally, a seventh suggestion: begin a meditation practice of contemplating the supreme principle that is beyond the pettiness of this world. Meditation is not merely making the mind think that it is meditating. Meditation is literally the embodiment of truth and trust. It is knowing that I can confront myself in a spirit of serenity and that what I seek will be attracted to me.